In this video, we'll be talking about how to solve equations. So remember that variables are numbers that we don't know. With an equation, when we're solving, we're trying to figure out what number is the variable to make both sides of the equation the same or true, right? So ultimately, both sides of the equation need to be the same. All right, so we want to look at basically what is being done to the variable. So for 1a, we have 1 plus 5 equals 10. Well, we need to undo or get away what we're doing to the y, so that way we can figure out when it's by itself, what does it equal? The way that we do that is by canceling them, by doing the opposite function. So if we are adding 5 to y, in order to get rid of it, we need to subtract 5. So the opposite function of plus is minus. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5. If I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other. Otherwise, my equation is no longer equal, right? So here I have plus 5 minus 5, which is 0. I usually cross that off, and then I still have the y remaining. So y equals 10 minus 5, which is 5. Now, the great thing about problems like this is that you can actually check your answer. So on tests, you will be asked to do the checking process on many of the problems. Whether it's asked for or not, it needs to become part of your normal process. So here, the way to check it is I'm just going to rewrite the original problem equals 10. Now I need to see, well, is y actually equal to 5? So now I use the evaluation process. So just a little review on that. Remember, when you're evaluating, you take your variable out and replace it with parentheses, right? So parentheses plus 5 equals 10. Now I substitute the 5 into the parentheses. Unlike solving, you simplify both sides of the equation. You don't work across the equal sign. So on the left-hand side, I get 5 plus 5, which is 10. Well, that equals 10. So sure enough, my answer is y equals 5. All right, let's do the next one. So again, we need to look at what's being done to the variable. So in this case, we have x minus 3. In order to cancel that minus 3, we need to add 3. We need to do the opposite function. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3. Add 3. Again, I need that negative 3 plus 3 to cancel, right, to become 0, which it does. So I cross those off, and I get x equals 11. Now, the last step on this, right, is again to always check your answer. So I'm going to rewrite the original. So I have x minus 3 equals 8. I take out the variable and I put in my parentheses, right? So parentheses minus 3 equals 8. Now I put the 11 in, the number that I got for x, and I do 11 minus 3, which is in fact 8. So that was the correct answer. All right, now what would happen is if it was wrong is you would run the calculation and both sides would not be the same number. If that happens, you need to go back and either check your answer. That's usually where I start, right? Rerun your calculations and see if you come up with a different answer. Your mistake could happen in the check process, so you could also go back and look at that. But the key is if they don't equal each other once you've simplified both sides, something is wrong and you want to go back and figure out what that is. Okay, so for this one, notice that the variable is on the right-hand side this time. The location of the variable doesn't change the process at all. You just have to remember that you are getting everything away from the variable. right? That's the goal of this. So in this case, there's b plus 2. Well, it's the plus 2 being done to the b, and so that's what I need to get rid of. So I go ahead and I'm going to do my minus 2. Again, that goes down to 0. And I have b equals -5. That, because you switch everything across the equal sign, you could also write it as b equals -5. So as long as everything moves across the equal sign without changing, you can absolutely do that. So, all right. Why don't you go ahead and pause for a second and try the check process on this one, and then turn the video back on and I'll go ahead and do it for you. All right, so check process. I'm going to rewrite my original. So -3 equals b plus 2. Now I take my b out and replace it with parentheses. So I get -3 equals parentheses plus 2. Now I take the answer that I got, which was -5, and I put it into the parentheses. Now I have -3 equals, and then -5 plus 2 is -3. So again, I confirmed that -5 is correct. Okay, so for D, in this case, we now have more than one term on each side of the equal sign. So before, we looked to see what was being done to the variable, and we did the opposite to cancel it. But the first step for all of these is that you have to make sure that everything is simplified on each side of the equal sign before you move across the equal sign. So for letters A, B, and C, there wasn't anything you could combine on each side, so that's why we went straight to moving across the equal sign. But now on the left side, we have -17 plus 15, which are like terms. So we need to go ahead and combine that first and then start getting x by itself. So -17 plus 15 is -2 equals, and then x plus 3 is unchanged. X plus 3 are not like terms, so I can't combine them. So now I'm doing an addition of 3, right? So it's x plus 3. So to cancel the plus 3, I have to subtract 3. And again, anytime I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other. So here I get -5 equals x. And that is my final answer. So again, pause the video, go ahead and try that check process, and then I'll go ahead and do it for you. Okay, so I have -17. Again, I'm just rewriting this. And then x plus 3. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. But because there's something I can actually do at this point, I'm going to, in my rewrite, go ahead and combine the left-hand side, and then I'll put parentheses in for the variable, and then go ahead and substitute. Okay, so I get -2 because I have to get the left-hand side combined anyway, so it doesn't really matter when you do it, as long as it happens before you start working across the equal sign. So before you actually get your other number in is when I would recommend it. Okay, so equals, we have parentheses plus 3. Now I go ahead and substitute in the -5. And I get -2 equals -2. Success. Okay, now go ahead and pause the video and try E. And go ahead, both the solving and the checking process, go ahead and turn the video on and watch as I finish it out. Okay, so for this one, unlike D, there's nothing I can combine on each side of the equal sign, right? There's a single, it's called a constant. So a number, basically, without a variable connected to it, is called a constant. There's nothing to combine on the left. On the right-hand side, I have a variable and a constant, means I can't combine them. So I am ready to go ahead and move across the equal sign. All right, so minus 5 is being done to the x. So to cancel that, I need to do plus 5. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other to keep everything balanced. That becomes 0, and I get x equals negative 5 plus 5. Well, that cancels also, so it becomes 0. Now notice how I'm working things vertically, and I do that very purposefully because it's much easier to follow your steps if you do it vertically. So please follow this process. You may have more experience working horizontally, but as problems get more and more complex, working horizontally is extremely difficult to keep track of and stay organized. So the likelihood of making mistakes is really big. So please now make sure that you're doing the vertical calculations. Okay, so now we're ready to check. And the reason that this might feel a little bit unique is that we don't often end up with 0 in our answer. But this problem is a good illustration that, in fact, 0 can be your answer sometimes, and it's absolutely fine. But like all other answers, we want to go ahead and check them. All right, so again, I'm going to rewrite the original problem, x minus 5. I'll go ahead and rewrite it and replace the x with my parentheses. Now I'm going to put 0 in, while negative 5 equals, and then 0 minus 5 is negative 5. So another confirmation, right, that our answer is correct.